Hey guys, tonight we're going back to ancient times, but not to marble palaces, togas, or golden laurel crowns. No, we're heading out to the countryside, far from Rome's gleaming temples, to spend a long, slow day as a Roman peasant. That means mud. That means sandals made of twine. That means waking up sore and somehow still late. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up face first in straw. Your nose is full of dust. You sneeze loudly, and something squeals in response. A pig, not yours, your brother's. It's in the house again. You blink a few times. There's no candlelight, just a faint gray smear leaking in through the wall's cracks. The day has started, or rather, the day started without you. You sit up slowly. Your back creaks. Your knees pop. Your shoulder reminds you of yesterday's failed attempt at hauling that stubborn cartwheel out of the ditch. You are 37. You feel 80. You look around the hut. One room, packed dirt floor, woven straw walls patched with mud. Your wife is already gone, probably down at the stream trying to wash the family's only tunic. Your kids are a tangle of limbs in the corner, snoring, breathing heavily through snot-streaked noses. You rise. You don't stretch. You've learned not to. Stretching makes the ache worse. You step over the pig, again, not yours, and wince as you stub your toe on the firewood stack. There's no fire. You forgot to stoke it last night. Again. You mutter something in Latin that wouldn't look good carved in marble. Then you open the door. Outside, the world is damp. The air smells of earth and manure. Mostly manure. A rooster crows somewhere, late and lazy. The sky is a washed-out blue, already warming up. You squint. You take 3 steps, and your sandal strap breaks. You don't swear. You just nod slowly, like the gods themselves planned this. You hobble to the edge of the fence, half-rotted, probably more symbolic than useful, and look out at the field. It's your field, sort of. You work it, but the harvest, that goes to the villa up the hill. You get a small share, smaller every year. The wheat's still short. The beans are dying again. You sigh. You hear someone behind you. Your neighbor, Gaius, is limping down the road with a bucket. He nods. Another day, he says. Another, you reply. It's not a greeting. It's a contract. You glance back at your hut. Your children are awake now. You can hear them bickering over something meaningless. There's no breakfast yet. No grain boiled, no milk. You make a mental list of things you need. Repair the fence, pull weeds, help your cousin dig the irrigation ditch, patch the roof again. The pig needs feeding. The beans need pleating. The tool handle's still cracked. Your tunic itches, and it's not even sunrise. You sigh again. Then you reach down, pick up your broken sandal, and shuffle toward the shed to start your day. Because you're a Roman peasant. And quitting isn't a thing you get to do. Breakfast is a loaf and a lie. You're sitting on a low stool beside the fire pit, which is finally breathing again thanks to 3 sticks, 2 prayers, and your wife's very pointed muttering. Smoke curls lazily toward the rafters, escaping through the same gap in the roof that let the rain in last night. In front of you sits a crust of barley bread. That's it. It's yesterday's bread, or maybe the day before. You can't tell any more. It's gone hard, and there's a little bit of green fuzz starting to form on the bottom edge. But if you don't eat it now, the pig will. You tear off a piece, dip it in lukewarm water to soften it, slightly, and chew. Slowly. It tastes like ash and effort. Your youngest reaches for a bit. You snap the loaf in half and give them the bigger piece. They smile with all 5 of their teeth and begin gnawing it like a small, determined rodent. This is what breakfast looks like when you're a Roman peasant. There's no fruit, no eggs, no olives. That's for market days, feast days, or your birthday, if someone remembers. Sometimes, if you're lucky, your cousin brings over leftover goat cheese from his master's villa. You had a sliver last month. You think about it more than is reasonable. Your wife hands you a shallow bowl of something grayish. Porridge. Kind of. It's made from lentils or barley or hope. It's hard to say. You eat it anyway. The kids fight over the last spoonful. You let them. It's mostly water and disappointment at this point. You scrape your bowl clean with a fingernail and lick it. Hunger's not new. It's just constant. Like wind. Like taxes. Like the sound of that cursed rooster down the road that never crows at the same time twice. Historians talk about Roman cuisine like it was all honey-roasted dormice and figs stuffed with nuts. And maybe it was. If you wore a toga, if you had a name that started with Lucius and ended with the senator. But down here in the dirt, breakfast is dry bread and warm air. You remember once, years ago, when your grandmother cracked open a soft-boiled egg, handed you a pinch of salt, and told you that for one moment the gods were watching. You believed her. Now, you think the gods are watching again, but more like how someone watches ants fight over crumbs. You sigh. You scratch your chest through your tunic. Your wife glares at you. The pig tries to nose into the fire pit. Again. You swat it away. It farts. The fire sputters. You stand. You stretch just enough to make everything pop. Then grab your hoe, your bag, your sandals, one now wrapped with twine, and step outside. The sun is higher now. The sky's gone from blue-gray to that blinding Roman white that means you'll be sweating before you finish your first row of beans. Breakfast is over. The work begins. The road to the field is long, not in miles, really. Just in misery. It's maybe half a mile, from your hut to the edge of the wheat plot. But every step feels like a tiny argument between your body and the gods. You start off slow. The sun's already hot on your neck, and the dust is loose this morning, powdery and clingy, the kind that coats your sandals and gets into places sandals were never meant to reach. Speaking of sandals, your left one is now held together with twine, 2 hopes, and a piece of old basket reed. It still flaps when you walk, smacks the back of your heel like a reminder that you can't afford new ones. Your right foot is blistered. Your left is resigned. You pass the village well. A woman is there, hauling water with arms that look stronger than yours. She nods. You nod. It's not a greeting. It's more of a mutual acknowledgement of suffering. A donkey trudges past. Its cart is empty. You envy it. Then comes the dung. There's no avoiding it. The main road is a shared space. People, animals, carts, accidents. The manure is everywhere, steaming in the sun, splattered in shapes your kids sometimes pretend look like letters. You sidestep one particularly enthusiastic pile and nearly lose your sandal in the process. Again, you mutter a curse. Not a strong one, just enough to keep you going. Your neighbor, Gaius, the one with the limp, waves from ahead. He's already halfway down the lane. He always gets there before you, and he always leaves after. You try not to resent him for it. He lost a toe to frostbite. You figure he's earned a head start. The road dips as you near the edge of the fields. The scent changes. Less smoke, more wild mint and pig. Your plot is on the far side, past the wheat your landlord keeps for himself and the beans that only ever grow halfway. You pause at the boundary marker, a crooked stick wrapped with a faded red ribbon, supposedly a charm for fertility, more likely just a reminder that what's yours is yours, and not to let your plow drift unless you want another lecture from the overseer. You squint at your plot. It's not large, maybe 20 paces by 30, sloped unevenly, with a patch of dirt near the corner that refuses to grow anything but rocks. Your hoe waits, leaning against the same stone you trip over every year. You think about kicking it. You don't. You drop your bag beside the field. It hits the ground with a puff of dust. Inside, a clay flask of water, a heel of yesterday's bread, and a single onion. You'll eat the onion if the bread is too hard, or the bread if the onion is too strong. You take a breath. The wind is light. The sky is clear. Your back already hurts. You pick up the hoe and begin. One row at a time. One curse at a time. One pebble in your sandal at a time. This is your life. And the road to the field is the easiest part. The tools are older than you are. You know this because your father used them, and his father before him, and probably someone named Publius back when Julius Caesar still had his hair. The hoe's handle is smooth where your grip lives, polished not by care but by calluses. The blade itself is chipped, bent slightly. You sharpen it with a rock that's seen more action than the local blacksmith. It works, barely. There's also the sickle, short, curved, and rusted in just the wrong place. It once had a leather grip, but that rotted away last harvest. Now you wrap your tunic around your hand and pretend it's fine. Then there's the spade. You hate the spade. Too heavy, too blunt. The wood always splinters when it rains, and the iron edge wobbles like a loose tooth. Every time you use it, your right shoulder reminds you that it's still angry about that fall from last summer. You pretend not to notice. Today's job? Turning the soil. Again. Because the last planting didn't take. Or maybe the birds were hungrier than usual. Either way, the overseer said to dig. So you dig. The hoe hits a root. You grunt. You lean in. The handle groans, literally groans, and you brace your foot against the earth. The root finally gives. You fall backward into the dirt. It's fine. You're used to it. You sit for a moment, catching your breath. The sky is pale and flat. The sun isn't high yet, but your tunic's already sticking to your back. You take a swig of water, warm, metallic, delicious. You dig again. The rhythm isn't pleasant, but it's familiar. Lift, swing, crack, shift, repeat. Your shadow stretches across the row, twitching like it's tired too. Birds squawk in the distance. A dog barks. Somewhere, someone's yelling at a goat. You keep digging. The tools don't help you. They hinder you most days. But they're yours, or at least you've used them long enough that they've stopped fighting you. That's something. Historians love to talk about Roman engineering, aqueducts, roads, colosseums. But down here, at peasant level, the technology is less impressive. You once asked the overseer for a new hoe. He laughed. Then he told you to pray to Ceres for better luck. You're still waiting. Your wife says you should carve a new handle from the ash tree near the river. But the ash tree belongs to the villa, and last time someone borrowed firewood without asking. They ended up missing 2 fingers. So you stick with what you've got, which today is a tool that creaks, a plot of land that barely tolerates you, and a sun that refuses to give you cloud cover. You wipe your brow. Keep digging, because if you don't, the soil stays stubborn. The seeds don't take, and your children eat even less than they did yesterday. At least the hoe still holds together, mostly. Your boss is a senator who's never seen dirt. You've never met him directly. Of course not. He lives up on the hill in a villa so wide it casts a shadow over your entire field for an hour each morning. It has marble columns, real ones, not painted logs like the temple in the village square. Sometimes you see him from a distance, riding past in a litter carried by 4 sweating slaves, fanning himself with a peacock feather. His robe gleams. His sandals are new. He looks like someone who thinks grapes peel themselves. He owns everything you touch. The land, the trees, the well, the path. Even the fence you built with your own hands was improved under villa oversight, which means he claimed it and doubled your taxes. The grain you grow, his. The olives you pick, his. The goat you borrowed last spring, definitely his. And you're still paying for it. You don't work for coin. You work for survival. The steward is the one who manages things. Thin, pale, always sweaty. He comes once a week with a scroll and a sneer. Reads off the quota like it's scripture. 5 bushels, 2 amphorae of oil, and a chicken. By Saturn's day. You want to ask which Saturn's day. He doesn't laugh at jokes. He always brings a scribe. Young, smug, probably can't even read. Just copies numbers and occasionally pretends to count your chickens, as if they don't all look identical. If you miss the quota, they adjust your share, which means you get less grain, less water, less everything. Last time, they cut your firewood rations. It's summer now, but you haven't forgotten how cold the last winter was. One year, Gaius tried to protest. He stood in front of the steward and said, "We've given all we have." The steward blinked slowly, then had his guards take Gaius's best pig. You haven't tried protesting since. Sometimes the senator hosts feasts at the villa. You hear the music echo down the hill. The scent of roasting meat drifts over your field like a cruel joke. Your wife once snuck a look. She said there was a fountain, an actual fountain, that poured wine. You're not sure if she's lying. You hope she is. Otherwise, the gods have a very twisted sense of humor. You keep working. You hoe the row. You pull a weed. You wipe your forehead on your sleeve and squint at the villa's rooftop glinting in the sun. You wonder if he even knows your name. Probably not. To him, you're a tally on a scroll, a line in a ledger, a shadow bending in the field. But if you stop working, you'll hear from him. Not directly, of course. Just through the steward, and the guards, and the missing goat that never really felt like yours anyway. So, you keep your head down, and you swing the hoe, because your boss may not know what soil feels like, but he sure knows how to make you bleed into it. You're paid in nothing, not nothing, nothing. Just the kind of nothing that looks like something if you squint hard enough. A little grain, a bit of oil. Maybe, if the harvest was good and Jupiter's in a generous mood, a wedge of cheese that smells like a regret someone buried in straw. But coin, real coin. You've seen fewer denarii than you have fingers, and one of your fingers is crooked from that time you got it stuck in the grain mill. They call it in kind. Payment in goods, in shares of the crop you grew, in rights to continue tenancy. Which means, don't complain, and we won't take your hut away. The steward explains it once a season. Your portion of the yield entitles you to a fourth of the 8th reserve of the villa's wheat stock, barring imperial levies and spoilage. You nodded the first few times. Now you just smile and take the bag. You carry it home, light, always light, and your wife pretends not to notice. She turns it over into the barrel beside the hearth and doesn't count it out loud, just sighs. Your kids know better than to ask, "Is that all?" They've learned to read the weight of a sack by the bend in your back. Sometimes, when the villa is feeling generous, usually around festivals or after a good harvest, which rarely happens at the same time, you get an amphora of wine. It's sour and warm and probably stepped on by 3 different people, but you drink it like it's ambrosia, because free wine is a better myth than the gods themselves. Once, a traveling merchant offered to pay you in coin for olives. Real coin. You took the deal. The steward found out. He called it unauthorized trade with external agents and fined you 2 chickens. You didn't even own 2 chickens. You had to buy them from Gaius. He charged double. You still owe him, and the merchant never came back. You've heard stories of peasants in other provinces who get paid regularly, in silver, even bronze. You try not to think about it. That kind of hope feels dangerous. Instead, you count what you have. A roof that leaks less than it used to. 3 kids who can almost say full sentences without coughing. A wife who still jokes sometimes. And a sack of grain that might last 2 weeks. If you ration it, if the mice don't get into it, if you don't drop it on the road like you did last year, when you tripped over a stone that definitely wasn't there the day before. You stare at your hands, dry, cracked, knuckles permanently brown from dust and sun, and remember that once you held a coin for an hour straight. Just turned it over and over like it was a small, quiet god. You gave it to your wife. She bought salt. It was a good day. You haven't seen another coin since. But maybe this season will be better. You laugh, softly, and go back to work. The weather is trying to kill you. Not dramatically, not with lightning bolts or floods that sweep away villages, just persistently, casually, like a bored senator flicking crumbs off his toga. Today, the sun is a personal offense. It rose early and never stopped rising. No breeze, no clouds, just endless white light beating down, like you owe it money. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your scalp itches beneath your straw hat. The dust you kick up as you walk settles inside your nose and throat and eyes. Your sweat dries before it can even cool you. You keep working. You don't have a choice. The beans won't water themselves, and the well is nearly dry. You lower the bucket slowly, carefully, whispering a prayer to Neptune even though you know this isn't really his domain. The water you pull up is warm and smells faintly of iron. You drink anyway. It tastes like survival. By midday, your arms are shaking. The sun is higher. It feels like it's sitting directly on your shoulders, like Jupiter himself is riding piggyback just to make a point. You tie a damp cloth around your neck. It helps for 5 minutes. Then, it's just another wet thing pressing against your skin. You think of winter, how you cursed the cold, how you prayed for warmth. The gods are funny that way. Historians call the Roman climate Mediterranean. Mild winters, dry summers. They don't mention the sheer spite of it. The way the heat peels your skin in strips. The way it bakes your field into cracked clay. The way it makes you squint so hard your eyelids burn. And when it's not hot, it's rain. Not gentle, cleansing rain. The kind that hits the roof like an angry mob and turns your road into soup. The kind that floods the barley rows, washes your sandals down the stream, and leaves you huddled under the leaky eave of your house. Holding a jug over your child's head like that will somehow help. And then there's the wind. It never arrives when you need it. It comes at night, whistling through the chinks in your wall, flickering your lamp, blowing soot into your stew. It shakes the shutters and spooks the pig. Once, it knocked over your drying rack. You lost 3 tunics and a towel. You swear it laughed. There are no seasons anymore, only weather moods. You pull weeds with one hand, wiping your forehead with the other. You can't remember when you last felt cool. Even the stream is warm now, more like a bowl of bath water everyone forgot to drain. Still, you work, because the beans are wilting, because the wheat doesn't care if your skin is pink and peeling, because you still owe 3 chickens to Gaius, and he's not going to let a sunburn slide. You glance up at the sky. It glares back. You mutter another curse. Then you pick up the hoe and keep going, because whether it's rain, wind, sun, or dust, the weather doesn't care. But your landlord does. Your house is made of mud and hope. That's not a metaphor. It's literally wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with earth and straw, held together by sweat, superstition, and the occasional passing goat. It leans slightly to the left, like it's trying to get away from the well. The roof is thatch, patchy, gray, and deeply invested in leaking during the worst possible moments. You've patched it with everything: old sacks, broken tiles, flattened clay pots. Nothing holds for long. The door doesn't quite close. It hangs crooked, creaking in the breeze like it's sighing. You kick a stone under it at night to keep it from swinging. Inside, it's one room. No partitions, no privacy, just a wide, uneven dirt floor and a few low platforms made from salvaged planks. One holds the family's straw pile. Another supports the table, if you're generous enough to call it that. It used to be part of a cart. The wheel's still attached on one side, and it makes a faint grinding sound when you lean on it. You've stopped leaning on it. The hearth is little more than a hole in the ground ringed with stones. Smoke curls up and out through a crooked hole in the roof. Unless it's raining. Then it curls inward and makes your eyes sting until everyone wheezes and blinks and pretends this is fine. It's not. But you live here. You share the space with your wife, your children, your brother, his wife, their baby, and, on most days, a pig who refuses to understand boundaries. The pig sleeps in the corner. You've tried penning it outside. It gets in anyway. You once came home to find it curled up in your sleeping spot. It snored, loudly. There's no bed. Just piles of straw, flattened mats, a few tattered blankets that smell like sweat, smoke, and possibly goat. There's one clay lamp. You ration the oil carefully. Sometimes you just sit in the dark. There are 2 windows. Technically. Really, they're holes covered in cloth during storms. You tried installing shutters once. They blew off in a windstorm and never came back. There's a shelf, nailed to the far wall, sagging with chipped cups, wooden spoons, and one cracked bowl you pretend is decorative. Your wife keeps a string of garlic over the doorway. For spirits, or rats, possibly both. The house breathes with you, creaks when you shift, groans when it rains, echoes every cough and complaint. In winter, it's a cold box. In summer, it's a slow cooker. There's no insulation, just prayer and proximity. You sometimes dream of a second room, just one more space, a corner where you could sit without someone stepping over your legs to get to the water jug. But building an addition takes wood, nails, time. You have none of those. So instead, you keep sweeping. The dirt never truly leaves. You just move it from one end to the other. At night, you lie in the straw, eyes to the slanted ceiling, listening to mice scrabble in the rafters and wondering if the gods ever slept on the floor. You decide they didn't, but you do, because it's your house. And it may be made of mud, but it's still home. Your clothes are held together by spite. You wear the same tunic every day. This one? It's brownish, originally white, maybe, or tan, or some noble shade with a name no one in your village uses. Now, it's the color of dust and dishwater, with stains that won't wash out and holes you've stopped trying to patch. The neckline is frayed. The hem is uneven. One sleeve is shorter than the other because you caught it on a fence nail and couldn't be bothered to fix it properly. So now it flaps. The belt is a cord of braided wool. Sort of. You think it was part of a sack once. It holds most days. On others, you tie a knot and hope. Your sandals are truly pitiful. Leather straps, brittle from sun and sweat, clinging desperately to soles made from layers of old bark and hope. Your right sandal has been patched so many times it looks like a bird's nest. The left one is currently tied together with a shoelace you found in a ditch. You think it might have belonged to a soldier once, or a drunk, or both. On cold mornings, you wear a wool cloak, or rather, the shredded remains of one. It was your father's. It smells like mildew and memory. It's missing the bottom corner and flutters dramatically in the wind, when there's wind. It's also itchy. So itchy. You pretend it's comforting. Your wife has one tunic as well. She's better at patching it. She uses thread unraveled from sacks, or sometimes the strings off herb bundles. Her work is crooked but sturdy. Your children wear whatever's left. Bits of adult clothing cut down, tied up, or pinned together. One of them wears a hat that used to be a sleeve. Another has a tunic so full of patches, it's more thread than cloth. But they laugh anyway. Once, a traveling merchant passed through wearing a tunic dyed deep blue. Everyone stared. He wore it like a banner. You heard he bought it in Rome. You also heard it cost more than your entire field produces in a month. You try not to think about that, because your clothes, however ragged, still cover you, mostly, and that's enough. Historians talk about Roman dress like it's all togas and golden trim. They don't mention that peasants wore what they could steal from time and keep from falling apart. That every hole you patch is a quiet battle against the weather, the work, and the world trying to strip you down. You once dreamed of new sandals, soft leather, proper soles, straps that didn't dig into your heel like hungry rats. Then your daughter needed medicine, so you kept the sandals and walked anyway. Today, you'll probably sew a new patch into the knee, or maybe just ignore the hole and pretend you're more ventilated than usual. Because this is peasant fashion. You wear what doesn't fall off, and hope no one laughs loud enough to hear. Your bath is a stream when it's not a toilet. It's mid-morning, and you're already coated in a pleasant glaze of sweat, dust, and whatever that was. You stepped in behind the olive press. You make your way down the path behind your neighbor's field, past the crooked fig tree and the stump where the rooster perches like it owns the province. There, trickling between rocks and roots, is your bath. It's not much, barely ankle deep in places. It smells like moss and frogs and the memory of cleaner water. But it moves, and it's colder than your barrel back home, so you count it as a luxury. You kneel at the edge and splash water on your face. It stings your eyes. Too much grit in the current. But it feels better than nothing. Your wife comes here early, before sunrise, when the water's clearer and the road is quieter. She washes clothes by slapping them against flat stones and muttering darkly. You've tried to help. She told you to go weed something useful. Fair. You strip down to your undercloth, what's left of it, and wade in slowly. The bottom is slick with silt, and something slithers away as you move. You try not to think about it. You duck your head under and come up sputtering, cold, sharp. It helps. It reminds you that your body still works. You scrub with a fistful of leaves. They smell a little bitter, but do the job. There's no soap, not for you. Not unless the villa's kitchen throws out a sliver, and even then, it's fought over like a festival prize. You scrub your arms, your neck, behind your ears. You breathe through your mouth. You try not to think about the fact that 3 days ago, a pig was very definitely bathing in this same stretch of stream. And yesterday, a boy emptied a chamber pot from the upstream bank. You finish quickly, shake off, air dry while sitting on a sun-warmed rock and swatting at flies. There's no towel. Your tunic sticks as you pull it back on, still damp from the stream, still scratchy from the dust. Cleanish. That's as good as it gets. Your teeth. You chew mint leaves when you can find them. Otherwise, you swish with water and spit. Once, someone mentioned scraping with a fishbone. You tried. Never again. Hair. If it gets long, your wife trims it with sheep shears. Last time, she sneezed halfway through, and now one side is permanently shorter. Nails. You bite them or let the dirt wear them down. Sometimes, on feast days, the steward brings barrels of oil and hot water for the villa slaves to use. You catch a whiff of steam, hear the splash and laughter. You imagine what it must feel like. Hot water, clean cloths, privacy. Then someone yells your name from the road. Back to work. You tie your belt, grab your sandals, and walk. Still damp. Still grimy. But better than before. Mostly. Disease loves you more than your wife does. You wake up to the sound of coughing. Not your own this time, your middle child, wheezing through a nose that hasn't been clear since last Saturnalia. You roll over and exhale slowly. Everyone's still asleep, save for the pig, who's making wet, snuffling noises under the table. The hut smells like mildew and old onions. You scratch your chest, another rash. You've stopped asking where they come from. Maybe it's the straw mattress, maybe the river, maybe the communal plow that hasn't been properly cleaned since Caligula was a teenager. You don't know. You just scratch. Your wife mutters in her sleep, swatting at an invisible insect. She's been nursing a boil on her ankle for 3 weeks. It weeps. She ties a rag around it and keeps going. She says it's fine. You both know it isn't. Disease is your most frequent visitor. It knocks on the door unannounced and sits beside your hearth like it pays rent. Some weeks it's fevers, long, strange nights where your child babbles about birds while shaking like a branch. Other times it's stomach trouble. You've learned to tell the difference between something we ate and something that might kill us. You remember when the pox came through. Red sores, angry and hot. Your cousin's baby didn't make it. Neither did 2 of your neighbors. You did. You still have the scars. People like to imagine Roman medicine as sophisticated. Herbs, doctors, baths. Not for you. If you want a cure, you ask the old woman who lives near the grove. She boils roots and mumbles charms. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You pay her in eggs or onions or gossip. You once went to a real medicus, traveled 2 hours to the market town with a shoulder you couldn't move. He looked at you, poked you twice, and gave you a vial of something that smelled like vinegar and dead bees. It made your stomach worse. You never went back. Now you trust garlic. And prayers. When someone dies, the whole village walks quieter for a day. Not out of grief, necessarily, just out of caution. Because no one wants to admit that they could be next. The baby down the lane has a cough that hasn't stopped for 5 days. You brought over some mint leaves. It's all you had. You cough into your elbow. Once, then again. You tell yourself it's the dust, or the mold, or the cold draft from the crack in the wall. But deep down, you know disease doesn't need a reason. It just needs a place to sleep. And you've got space. You pull on your tunic, damp again, and step outside into the morning light. Your back aches, your ankle throbs, your stomach grumbles. And still you walk, because the wheat won't harvest itself. And death doesn't wait politely. Your kids are always dirty and frequently sticky. You don't know how. You've watched them roll in clean straw and somehow come out crusted in mud. You've seen them eat dry bread and still end up with honey on their cheeks, even when you haven't had honey in the house for weeks. There are 3 of them. 4, if you count your cousin's boy, who's been staying with you just until they fix the roof. That was 6 months ago. The oldest is 9. He's already got shoulders like yours and a scowl to match. He helps in the field, when he's not trying to whack rocks with a stick or chase chickens until they riot. You tell him to focus. He tells you he's practicing war. The second one is clever. Too clever. She steals figs from behind the steward's cart and sells them back to the baker's son. You pretend not to notice. You were clever once, too. The youngest doesn't speak yet, but he makes sounds. Mostly screeches, occasionally song-like, frequently wet. They all smell like dust, sweat, and goat. You love them more than you can explain, but you sometimes wish they came with volume knobs, or at least fewer limbs. They fight constantly, over a stick, over a spot on the floor, over who gets to hold the spoon even when the bowl is empty. One time, they argued for half an hour about whether the sun was a torch or a coin. You didn't have the energy to correct them. They follow you everywhere. Into the field, into the stream, into the shed when you're trying to fix the hoe for the third time this week. You try to send them off on missions. Fetch water, pick herbs, chase the pig. They return triumphant and filthy. Your wife tries to keep them clean. She does. She boils water, scrubs hands, makes them strip before bed. It lasts for maybe 10 minutes. Then someone sits in the ashes, or drops a honey-soaked reed on their tunic, or decides to wrestle in the chicken coop. They are joy and chaos and everything between. Once, a visiting priest asked why your daughter had charcoal smeared on her chin. "She's drawing the gods," you said. He nodded. Didn't ask which ones. You catch glimpses of your younger self in them, the stubborn tilt of your son's jaw, the way your daughter squints before she lies. It's unsettling and sweet. At night, they pile together in the corner on a shared mat. They tangle limbs, kick each other, talk in half-sleep murmurs. The pig usually lies near them, snoring like a soft drum. You watch them for a while before bed. Dirty, sticky, alive. They don't know what the villa is planning. They don't understand taxes. They don't care about quotas. They just want figs and frogs and to stay up past curfew. And honestly, you'd give them all of that if you could. Even the frogs. The market cheats you blind. You go once a week, usually Saturn's Day. Not because it's restful, gods no, but because that's when everyone else goes. And if you don't show up, your neighbors assume you've either died or moved to Britannia. You pack your goods the night before. Onions, mostly. Some garlic if the gods were kind. Maybe a few eggs if the chickens stopped their nonsense long enough to lay. One time, you brought a jar of olive paste. You still talk about it like it was a heroic battle you barely survived. The market is a half-day's walk. You start early, before dawn, with a cart that creaks and one sandal already slipping. You arrive sore, dusty, and sweating through your tunic. It's already packed. Stalls everywhere, loud ones, colorful ones, baskets of figs, strings of garlic, heaps of dusty cloth that claim to be Egyptian linen but feel suspiciously like stretched goat hair. You find your usual corner between the man selling clay whistles and the woman who insists her jars of sea salt can cure everything from foot rot to betrayal. You lay out your onions. You smile. It begins. 2 sesterces, says a man with no teeth. You laugh. He laughs. You both know it's a lie. He leaves. A woman offers you bread for 5 onions. You point out it's stale. She shrugs. So are your onions. You barter. You haggle. You groan internally. By midday, you've traded half your goods for a chunk of cheese, a wilted bunch of greens, and a cracked cup you didn't ask for. You suspect the cheese is older than your pig. but it's cheese. You smile and thank her. The real challenge is weighing things. No one has proper scales. Everyone swears by their own system. This handful equals a loaf. This jar is worth 3 sips of oil. You once traded 6 eggs for a pair of sandals that fell apart before you left the stall. You still wear them. Once, a man tried to pay you in riddles. You declined. Barely. The tax collector lurks on the edge of the square. He wears a sash and a smile, and he watches every exchange like a hawk eyeing a rabbit. If you make too much, he'll want to share. If you make too little, he'll assume you're lying. There is no winning. Your wife insists you check every coin. Last time, someone gave you a melted token stamped with a goat. You still don't know what it was for. Possibly a game. Possibly a curse. By late afternoon, your bag is half as heavy and twice as disappointing. You start the walk home. Your sandals cut into your heel. The cheese leaks oil onto your tunic. The greens wilt faster than your hope. But you did it. You kept the house fed for another week. Sort of. As you walk, you count your trades and wince. The market cheats you blind. But it's the only place you can afford to keep losing. The tax collector smiles too much. You see him before you hear him, riding down the main path on a horse that's shinier than your entire wardrobe. He's wearing red today. Bright, smug, expensive red. The kind that only senators, gods, or people who've never had to till their own field wear. His scroll is already open. You try not to groan out loud. Your wife mutters something under her breath and disappears into the house, clutching the good bowl. The children scatter. You stand your ground. Because running doesn't work. It just makes things worse. He approaches slowly, like he's savoring the smell of fear. He nods at your fence, broken, your gate hanging, and your field wilted. He doesn't comment. He doesn't have to. Then he dismounts. That's always a bad sign. "Greetings, citizen," he says, like he doesn't remember your name, even though he was here 3 weeks ago, demanding 2 chickens and a bundle of flax. You nod. He unrolls the scroll. It's long, it always is. He points. 2 bushels of barley, 1 amphora of oil, and, yes, half a pig. Due last week. You open your mouth. Close it. Reconsider. The pig is gone. Traded for medicine when your son's fever wouldn't break. The barley is growing. Slowly. Maybe. The oil? You used what little you had when the neighbor's barn caught fire, and you had to seal the roof from the smoke. You say none of this. You shrug instead. The tax collector tuts. Then he smiles. That smile again. Like he's imagining your entire life as a tally to be adjusted. "You'll have to make it up," he says. "We can't have inconsistencies in the census." He says it like it's poetry. You nod slowly. Offer a jar of vinegar. He takes it without blinking. Then he eyes the old pot by the hearth. You step sideways, casually. He raises one eyebrow. Your daughter peeks from behind the curtain. He waves at her. She ducks. "I'll be back in a fortnight," he says. You don't say goodbye. He mounts the horse and trots away, scroll fluttering like a tail behind him. You exhale, slowly. Your wife reappears. She asks what he took. You say everything but the pig. She laughs once. Hollow. The taxes never end. Even when you think you've paid them all, someone finds a new way to measure your debt. a new fee, a new levy, a new temporary emergency tribute to fund a road you'll never walk or a war you'll never hear about again. You heard the emperor raised a new legion. You wonder if they know who paid for their sandals. You tighten the rope on your belt. Your stomach grumbles. You glance at your field. Then you go back to work, because the collector smiles. And that's somehow worse than if he didn't. You worship gods who ignore you. There's a little altar in the corner of your hut. 3 stones stacked beside a cracked tile painted with a fading sun. Your wife lights a stub of incense on feast days. You sprinkle wine on it when you have any left, which is rare. Most days, the gods get whatever you can spare. A crust of bread, a whisper, a sigh. You say the names, Jupiter, Mars, Ceres. You don't always mean it. This morning, your fence collapsed. Again. You tied it with cord, wedged it with a wedge of wood you were sure would hold. It didn't. The goat wandered out, knocked over your neighbor's laundry pot, and is now sulking beneath the fig tree like it owns the empire. You glare at the altar. The gods don't answer. You know their stories. Everyone does. How Jupiter hurled lightning at liars. How Mars taught soldiers to shout. How Ceres wept for her daughter and forgot to grow the crops. You whisper to Ceres sometimes, especially when the barley turns brown too early or the beans just give up. You think she listens, or at least pretends to. Your wife swears by Vesta. She talks to the hearth like it's a person. She thanks it when the fire catches on the first try and scolds it when the stew boils over. Sometimes she leaves herbs on the doorstep for the household spirits. The pig eats them. You try to believe. You do. But when your sandals split or the blight returns or your neighbor's boy dies of a fever in the middle of the night, you wonder if the gods are busy, or bored, or both. There's a festival soon, Feast of Saturn. The steward says the villa will sacrifice a bull. You'll probably just burn some dried lentils and call it even. Last year, you offered your best onion. The next day, it rained too hard and flattened your wheat. You try not to take it personally. The priest in the village says piety brings reward, but he wears clean robes and sleeps behind a locked door. You've never seen him with a splinter or a bad toe or a child who won't stop coughing. You wonder if the gods prefer the clean, or if they're just laughing. One time, your daughter made a little figure out of clay and left it by the stream. For Mercury, she said, so he'll help you find the goat. You didn't find the goat, but she did. You thanked Mercury anyway, quietly. At night, when the wind howls and the roof creaks and your joints throb with a pain that doesn't care about age or effort, you look up at the stars, and you ask whoever's listening to let you make it to spring. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all you can do. You're not technically a slave, but that's how you describe it now. You even said it aloud once, after a few too many sips of sour wine by the hearth. I'm not a slave, you muttered, just near enough. Everyone nodded. No one laughed, because you're free. On paper. You can leave, in theory. You're bound to no master, wear no chain, owe no collar or brand. You can walk to the edge of the village and beyond. No one will chase you. No one will drag you back. But if you go, you'll starve. You don't own land. You rent it, work it, bleed into it. But the deed belongs to a man you've never met, the villa lord's cousin's son, or something equally ridiculous. You've been told his name. You forget it often. What matters is this. If you stop working, you stop eating. If you don't meet quota, they take more. If you fall ill and can't sow in spring, there's no harvest come autumn. And if there's no harvest, well, your freedom is a small thing. A bird in a wicker cage with the door propped open, but a fox outside waiting. You've seen real slaves. The villa has them. They work the olive groves, clean the halls, press the grapes during wine season. Some look worse than you. Some look better. The difference? They don't pretend to have choices. You do. And that illusion, that whisper of liberty, is both your gift and your curse. You can say no, but you never do. You can leave, but where would you go? You once knew a man who tried. He packed a sack, kissed his wife, and vanished before dawn. 2 weeks later, he was back. Thinner, quiet. He wouldn't say where he went. He just went back to his field and started digging. You didn't ask. You wonder what the line is. What would finally push you to stop pretending you're not owned by the land you till? Is it hunger? Sickness? The tax man asking for your last chicken? You haven't reached it yet. Maybe you never will. Some call this resilience. You call it something else. But you keep walking the same path each morning. You tie your belt. You shoulder your tools. You bow slightly when the steward passes. Because you're not a slave. You just carry the same weight. Without the chain, your neighbors are loud, nosy, and possibly drunk. You can hear them before you reach your own gate, laughing, shouting, arguing about something entirely trivial and entirely personal. Again, this morning it's about beans. Or possibly chickens. It's hard to tell over the volume. Gaius is at the center as usual. His voice carries like a cracked horn. He's gesturing wildly with a jug in one hand and a stick in the other, which he alternates between using as a pointer and as a crutch. His wife stands behind him, arms folded, lips tighter than your coin pouch. She's glaring at everyone, especially you, as if somehow this is your fault. It might be. You try to slip past unnoticed. You fail. "Ah, there he is," Gaius shouts, waving the jug. "Tell them what you told me about the tax." You freeze. You want to lie. You want to say you've forgotten the conversation. But you haven't. You said the tax collector overweighed your barley, which he did. Everyone knows it. But now it's a topic. A loud one. You shrug. He did. That's all you offer. It's enough to ignite another 10 minutes of shouting. You escape with a vague excuse about your fence, which is technically true. It's collapsing again, and your neighbor's goat is exploiting the breach like it studied siege warfare. You tug the fence post back into place while listening to the escalating domestic symphony next door. Your neighbors are impossible. They borrow without asking, return things broken, offer advice you didn't want, talk about you when you're 10 steps away, as if sound can't travel. And yet, they're also the reason you're still alive. When your roof fell in, they helped lift it. When your wife was sick, they brought broth. When your child needed medicine, Gaius walked half a day to the apothecary and came back with herbs and blisters. You returned the favor later, 3 days in his field while his leg healed. They're the ones who help you rebuild when the storm tears the village apart. They're the ones who watch your children when you're called to the villa unexpectedly. They're the ones who shout the loudest when someone else tries to cheat you in the market. Once, a traveling official asked why the village was so vocal. You said, "We're poor, but we're loud." He didn't laugh. You did. At night, you hear Gaius snoring through your thin wall. His dog howls at the moon at least once a week. His kids scream like banshees when playing tag. You grumble, but you don't mind. Because in a world where the villa owns your sweat and the taxman counts your breath, your neighbors are the only ones who make you feel like you exist. Even when they steal your tools. Again, your wife is tired of you and you don't blame her. She doesn't say it outright. She's too sharp for that. But it lingers between her sighs and the way she bangs the ladle against the pot, just a little too hard. It echoes in the silence. After you say something you think is funny and she doesn't laugh. You met her 12 years ago. She was 19. You were 21 and already balding. She came from the next village over, brought in as part of a land deal your families arranged after a storm, wiped out half your cousin's barley. Romantic, right? She had opinions even then. About how you held your tools, about the proper way to soak lentils, about the fact that goats, in fact, can jump higher than you think. You liked her immediately. Still do. But time has worn you both down like river stones. She wakes before you, works harder than you, keeps track of children, food, laundry, gossip, debts, and diseases. She tends the hearth, washes clothes with soap made from ashes and spit, and still manages to braid the little one's hair before sunrise. You try to help. You do. You fetch water. You patch roofs. You chase pigs. You take the children when she's had enough. But it never feels like enough. Sometimes she stares out the window while stirring the pot, eyes far away. You don't ask what she's thinking. You already know. A different life. A quieter one. One where her hands don't always smell like garlic and goat. You caught her once looking at the road the way people look at food when they're starving. She saw you watching, said nothing. Neither did you. And still, you care for each other in the ways you can. She tucks extra herbs in your bread on days when you limp. You patch her cloak when she's not looking. She cuts your hair badly. You let her. Love isn't loud anymore. It's not songs or poems. It's a nod, a half smile, a shared eye roll when the pig knocks over the water bucket again. At night, you lie side by side on the same straw mat, backs touching, and say nothing. Her breathing is soft. Yours is slow. And that's enough. Because even if she's tired of you, she's still here, still stirring the pot, still fixing the fence with rope you both know won't hold, still giving you that look that says, "You're an idiot." But you're her idiot. And in this life, that's something close to love. Every festival means more work. You'd think it'd be the opposite. That a holy day, a time of celebration, would come with rest, or at least a moment where your back isn't bent and your hands aren't soaked in something unpleasant. But no, today is a feast in honor of Ceres. Or maybe Saturn. You've lost track. There are too many gods and not enough food. The villa expects celebration. The overseer made the announcement 2 days ago. Decorate the road, he said. Clean your yards. Slaughter something fat and presentable. You weren't sure whether he meant the pig or your cousin. In either case, it meant you wouldn't be sleeping in. By dawn, your wife is pulling herbs and chopping onions. Your children are chasing the rooster because he has to look sprightly when presented in the festival lineup. You've been assigned to help raise the triumphal arch at the edge of the square. It's made from woven branches, bright cloth scraps, and 2 cracked columns that have stood slightly crooked since the last celebration, when someone's cousin drank too much and knocked into them mid-procession. You've been tasked with arranging flowers, which, in practice, means walking 5 miles to a dry hillside where a few yellowish weeds grow, picking them and tying them into bundles with twine you borrowed from your neighbor's sock. Then you help hang them. Then you help butcher the pig. Then you help sweep the street. Then you help dig the fire pit for the public stew, which will smell fantastic and taste mostly of ash and mystery. By mid-morning, your hands are stained, your back is soaked, and you're starting to feel like maybe this feast is punishment disguised as piety. Meanwhile, the villa is a blur of white linen and wine. You catch glimpses of guests arriving in chariots and litters, togas fluttering, jewelry glinting. Someone is playing a lyre, or trying to. You can't tell if the song is supposed to sound like that, or if they're just being paid to be enthusiastic. Back in the square, the village priest stumbles through a prayer. The altar catches fire slightly. Everyone cheers. Then the games begin. 3-legged races, olive pit spitting, a wrestling match that ends when both contestants fall asleep in the mud. The children laugh. The elders pretend not to. You smile once when your youngest wins a turnip in the pebble toss. The pig roast is dry, but you eat it. The wine is sour, but you drink it. The air smells of garlic, meat, and sweat, but you breathe deeply anyway, because this is as good as it gets. A feast you didn't ask for, celebrating gods you're not sure are listening, attended by people who haven't had a proper bath since the last rain, but still, it's something. The sun sets. The fire sputters. You walk home with a full belly and sore feet, wondering if anyone else noticed that festival just means a day off from field work, unless you count field-adjacent tasks done while pretending to have fun. You do, but you'll be back next year anyway. You have opinions about gladiators you'll never meet. You sit by the hearth with a piece of stale bread and the hollow end of a garlic clove, staring into the fire as Gaius holds court in your hut. He's had 2 sips of wine and is now an expert on all things arena. Magnus the Red would destroy Hadrian's lion, he says, smacking the table for emphasis. Magnus can't parry, someone mutters. He doesn't need to parry, Gaius snaps. He crushes skulls with a single swing. You've never seen a gladiator fight. None of you have. The arena is 2 days away on foot, and tickets cost more than you make in a month. But once a year, a retired soldier-turned-peddler comes through town with stories, bloody, outrageous, full of names and moves and nicknames so dramatic they sound like poorly translated curses. And for weeks after, everyone's a critic. Your kids draw stick figures in the dirt. Your neighbor's son has taken to swinging a broom like a sword and shouting things like, "Victory for the East Gate." You once knocked over a basket of apples mimicking a trident throw. You didn't tell your wife why. The thing is, gladiators are more than fighters to you. They're distant thunder, loud, thrilling, and unlikely to actually show up in your field. But still, you know their names: Decimus the Bonebreaker, Tanaquil the Hawk. Gaius likes to say she once fought blindfolded and won. You don't correct him. You listen. You nod. You offer your opinions carefully, like a man testing the depth of a puddle before stepping in. You say, "I heard the leopard of Numidia dodges arrows." You say, "They say he once killed 3 men with a garden rake." You say, "I'd still bet on the twins from the Hill District. They fight as one." You chew your bread. The fire pops. You imagine the roar of the crowd, the sun beating down on sand, the scent of sweat and iron and oil. You imagine stepping into the ring, gripping a sword you've never held, hearing your name echo from the stands. Then you look at your cracked hands, your fraying tunic, your blistered heel, and you exhale. Gladiators are myths you keep in your pocket, stories that make the wine taste better. They bleed so you can pretend you matter for a few minutes after sundown. Tomorrow, you'll be back in the field, hoeing rows, swatting flies, muttering at the beans. But tonight, you'll argue about whether iron is better than bronze. You'll shake your head at Gaius's theories. You'll say, "Magnus may swing hard, but if the hawk gets under his guard," and you'll almost believe it matters. Your dreams involve bread, not glory. You've had them for as long as you can remember. Simple, warm, quiet dreams. A loaf of bread still warm from the oven. A slab of salted pork that doesn't come with a sermon from the tax collector. A field that yields without complaint. A roof that doesn't leak. That's it. Not palaces, not marble, not purple togas or triumphal processions. Just comfort. You dream of a wooden bench with no splinters. A tunic that doesn't itch. A pair of sandals that match and hold together past the 3rd mile. Some nights, you dream of bread with honey. Real honey. Not the watery syrup sold in clay jars by that man with too many teeth and not enough honesty. Thick honey, the kind that drips from the side of the loaf and sticks to your fingers. The kind only the villa kitchens seem to get. You dream of eating it in peace, alone, no one asking for a bite. Just you, and the honey, and the silence. Sometimes you laugh at yourself. Once, when your cousin visited from the port town, he told you about the forum, the grand speeches, the statues, the plays performed for free. He described senators pacing with scrolls and scribes, and men paid just to stand around and nod wisely. You asked what they ate. He didn't remember. That was all you needed to know. Because your dreams don't have time for marble arches. They're too busy building imaginary ovens. You once dreamed of owning your own donkey. Just one. Not fancy. Not fast. Just strong. So you wouldn't have to drag the cart yourself on market days. That dream still visits sometimes. Usually after you've walked more than 10 miles in bad sandals. You dream of a bed, a real one, with legs, with straw that doesn't poke, with a blanket not shared by 3 small humans, 1 adult, and a pig who refuses to sleep anywhere else. You dream of waking up rested. You dream of having choices, like whether to go to the field today or tomorrow, whether to patch the roof or rest your back, whether to eat the apple or save it. Freedom is a funny thing in dreams. It never looks like power. It always looks like time. Time to breathe. Time to sit. Time to remember what it feels like to be a person instead of a tool. Your wife says she dreams of warm water and quiet children. You nodded the first time she said that. you've never heard a better fantasy. You finish your porridge, lean against the doorframe, and close your eyes for just a moment. The pig snorts nearby. The sky is starting to gray. The day calls, but for a heartbeat longer, you dream of bread. And the fire is still warm. Winter is just slow death. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a long, creeping cold that settles into your bones and doesn't leave until the buds return to the olive trees and the frogs start making noise again. You feel it in your toes first. You wake up one morning and your feet don't quite respond the way they should. The straw is cold. The hearth is cold. Your breath clouds in front of your face before you've even stood up. The pig sleeps closer these days. You don't argue. Your children burrow under every scrap of cloth in the hut. Their noses peek out, red and runny. You pull the blanket tighter and pretend not to notice that the youngest is coughing again. Your wife has already started the fire. She crouches in front of it with the same expression she uses when dealing with tax collectors: weary determination and quiet fury. The pot simmers. Lentils, maybe. Or barley. It's hard to tell anymore. You step outside. The air stabs your skin. The field is brown. Frost clings to the edges of every leaf like sugar. Nothing grows. The soil is hard. The wind whistles through the fence gaps and carries the scent of wet wool and impending sickness. You pull your cloak tighter. It doesn't help. Winter means less food. The market slows. Your neighbor's goat isn't producing. Your own stores are low. Half a sack of onions, a small wheel of cheese that smells suspiciously like mildew, and some dried herbs that taste more like broom straw than basil. You ration everything. Your wife is in charge of the ledger, scratched onto a bit of tile with a dull stick of charcoal. You pretend not to watch her tally every crumb. You try not to complain. But winter is long, and every chore is harder. Water freezes. You chip ice from the well with a borrowed hammer. The bucket handle is cold enough to burn your fingers. You drop it once. It cracks. You use a pot instead. The path to the woods is treacherous now. One wrong step and you'll twist an ankle, or worse. Gaius did that 2 winters ago. He still walks like one leg belongs to someone else. You gather wood. Slowly. Your back aches more. Your joints creak. You pretend the extra wheeze in your lungs is from the cold and not from whatever's been growing there since the autumn rains. You cough into your sleeve. No one mentions it. Inside, the children build little temples from firewood scraps and whisper prayers to Vesta. You don't stop them. Whatever helps. You nap more during the day. It's the only way to avoid eating before supper. Your dreams are quieter now. Less bread, more blankets, more silence. When the snow comes, it's beautiful for about 5 minutes. Then it's just another weight to carry. Another thing between you and the sun. Another reminder that life, even in the empire, shrinks when the world turns white. You survive, of course. You always do. But winter never lets you forget how fragile that is. You almost moved to the city. Almost. It started with a rumor. They always do. A traveler passed through, dusty boots and a scroll, tucked under one arm, claiming the roads were paved with opportunity. Rome, he said. Rome is where things happen. People are paid for their work. You can earn your freedom, your coin, even your own room. A room with walls made of stone. A roof that doesn't leak. Your cousin, Titus the Foolish, as everyone calls him, believed it. He packed his tools, kissed his mother on the cheek, and left at sunrise with a loaf of bread and 2 coins he swore would multiply in the city. You thought he'd come back within a week. He didn't. Then a month passed. Then a season. Then a letter came. It arrived in the hands of a merchant, folded carefully, written in Titus's chicken-scratch handwriting, words misspelled, but it was his. He said he'd found work, real work, carrying bricks for a builder, 12 copper a week, a spot to sleep in the workshop, meat twice a month. It sounded like a lie. But then again, most good things do. You thought about it, truly. You stood in your field, back aching, fingers bleeding from another wrestling match with the hoe, and you stared down the road. What if? What if you left? What if you stepped away from the mud and the pigs and the straw and tried for something bigger? You told your wife. She blinked, stirred the pot, asked if the city had pigs. You didn't know. You asked Gaius. He snorted. You'll come back with no shoes and less hope. You asked your daughter. She said she didn't want to leave the fig tree. You let the idea sit. Then one day, out of sheer curiosity, or madness, you walked the main road toward the city. Just a few miles. It was louder than you expected. Carts rattling, people shouting, dogs barking at things you couldn't see. The smell hit you first. Smoke, sewage, fish, and desperation. The buildings were taller, the shadows longer. You passed men with swords, women with coal-rimmed eyes, children darting between legs with sticky hands and wide grins. Someone bumped you. You checked your pouch. It was still there, but only just. You saw a baker slap a boy for asking about crusts. You saw a man collapse in the gutter. You saw a girl sweeping steps with the deadest eyes you've ever seen. You turned around, walked home slowly. You said nothing. But that night, you stirred the fire a little longer, shared an extra bit of onion, laughed at the pigs snoring, because you almost moved to the city. Almost. But Rome is for people with coin, or ambition, or armor. You have none of those. You have barley and bruises and people who know your name. And sometimes that's better than stone walls. You teach your kid the same miserable routine. It's not intentional, not cruel, just inevitable. You hand him the hoe when he's tall enough to lift it without falling over. He drags it through the dirt, crooked lines and clumsy steps, and looks up at you with the kind of hope that only someone who doesn't yet understand can muster. Like this, he asks. You nod. Because he's trying. Because you don't have time to correct him. Because the beans need turning before the sun climbs too high. Later, you show him how to patch a tunic, how to hold the clay tile steady while grinding wheat, how to recognize bad barley before the mold sets in. He learns quickly. He has to. You don't want this for him. But what else is there? He asks about the villa sometimes, wonders what it's like inside, what the food tastes like, whether they get to wear togas every day or just on feast days. You make a joke. Probably even their pigs are clean. But he's not laughing. You see him watching the road. Same way you used to. Same way you still do now and then. Your daughter is smarter. She's already learned how to trade things at the market without your help. Once, she returned with a whole jar of lentils in exchange for 2 cracked bowls and a smile. You still don't know how. Your youngest just follows the pig. You hope he stays that way. When it rains, you keep the older two inside and teach them how to mend things, how to patch walls, how to count sacks, how to boil herbs for coughs. You tell them about the gods, about the seasons, about how the moon affects planting, about which weeds are edible and which will make you see ghosts. You try to make it sound like wisdom, not resignation. You tell stories around the hearth, half-true ones, mostly borrowed from old men who swore they once met a centurion or shook hands with a retired gladiator. Your kids laugh anyway, because they don't know better. Not yet. You hear them whisper sometimes about building a better hut, catching a cart to the city, raising a chicken that lays 2 eggs a day. You let them, because hope, however small, is part of the inheritance. You may not pass down land or coin, or a name that means anything outside your village, but you can pass down rhythm, survive the day, feed the fire, keep the weeds at bay, sleep, do it again. You tuck them into their straw mat, pull the blanket tight, kiss their foreheads and murmur something old and safe. Tomorrow, they'll wake with dirt under their nails and chores on their minds. Just like you, just like always. You go to bed with a sigh and a splinter. The hut is quiet now, except for the pig, snoring softly near the door. Your wife has curled into the far edge of the straw mat, back to you but close enough to share warmth. The children are piled like laundry in the corner, limbs askew, hair tangled with hay. One is mumbling in their sleep. Another drools onto the mat. You'll flip it in the morning. The fire is nearly out. Just embers now, winking in the dark like tired stars. You don't stoke it. The night is cold, but not cruel. And there's no more wood inside anyway. You shift your weight, and a sharp sting hits your heel. Another splinter. From the floorboard by the hearth, probably. The same one that's been splintering since the last time you swore you'd fix it. You rub your foot and sigh. You lie back. The roof creaks gently with the breeze. The walls whisper as they settle into night. Outside, an owl hoots once. Far off, a dog barks. Then quiet. This is the best part of the day. Not because it's comfortable. It's not. Your hip hurts. Your shoulders cramped. The straw is itchy in new places every week. But you're horizontal. Still. Breathing. And no one is asking you for anything. You let your thoughts drift. To the beans, still not sprouting. To the market, where you left 3 onions and somehow came back with 2. To the fence that needs mending. To the stew you'll try to stretch for tomorrow's supper. To the kids' cough. To the neighbor's gossip. To the tax collector's smile. But slowly, the thoughts lose their edges, soften, sink. Your breathing slows. Your limbs grow heavy. Your jaw unclenches. You made it through another day, not a glorious day. Not a day of wealth or renown. Just a day where the field didn't kill you, the roof stayed on, and your kids went to sleep fed. A day in which your name didn't change history, but stayed known to the people who matter. Your eyes close. The splinter still throbs a little, but it's fine. You're home. The fire fades to a dull glow, soft, slow, steady. The pig has settled into silence. The children shift in their sleep, their breath light and even. Your wife sighs once, then drifts deeper. And you, lying on your back with a blanket that's just enough and a roof that's mostly whole, finally let the day go. No more fences to mend, no more rows to hoe, no more awkward exchanges at the market or visits from men with scrolls and smiles. Just stillness now. The kind that clings to the edges of night like morning is too far off to matter. Your muscles relax one at a time. Your thoughts unravel like twine from a loose coil, slow and soft and meaningless. You think, briefly, of the fig tree in spring, of the stream when it runs clear, of the way fresh bread smells when it's truly fresh. Not a dream, not a fantasy, just a memory. A quiet one. The wind brushes against the wall like a lullaby. The straw beneath you rustles once. Then all is still. Let yourself sink now. Let the weight of the day slip off your shoulders and down through the mat into the earth, where it can't follow you. You've done enough. You've given enough. You've survived again. And in this life, that is its own kind of victory. Sleep now. Dream of simple things. Warm bread, dry feet, the sound of someone saying your name, not because they need something, but just because they see you. The fire flickers one last time, then goes quiet.